Diabetes. An epidemic disease in the United States. There's 1 million new cases of diabetes every year. There's 32 million diabetics as we speak right now in America. 30 million of the 32 million diabetics are adult-onset type 2 diabetics. They make up the bulk of the diabetic population. And adult-onset type 2 diabetics make more insulin than non-diabetics. There's not an insulin problem with them. And usually if you're asking about insulin, say, well, I've got insulin. How can I be a diabetic? And so doctors say, well, you've got insulin-resistant diabetes. It's not working. The reason why it's not working is you're deficient in 2 trace minerals, chromium and vanadium, and their cofactors necessary for them to work, which are required by your insulin to work in your body. You can make tons of insulin, but if you don't have those trace minerals, your insulin's not going to work. We learned in 1957 that we could prevent and cure adult-onset type 2 diabetes in laboratory animals, pet animals, and farm animals by giving them these 2 trace minerals and their cofactors. This lay dormant for 20 years in human medicine until 1977 when they found out that they could give intravenous chromium and vanadium and their cofactors to people who had diabetes, and they were unconscious from head injuries. They were in a coma. And they were miraculously cured by giving them intravenously these trace minerals and their cofactors. Now, you can't say that, oh, well, they just believed that they were going to get cured because they were going to get cured because they're in a coma. They didn't know what was going on. Now, how come your doctor doesn't tell you this stuff? I mean, it's been proven over and over and over in animals. It's been proven over and over and over in people. It's been published in every big medical journal in America and in the world. It sort of comes through every couple of years as renewed, people look at it. It's not like it's a mystery. Every doctor knows this. Why don't doctors tell you this? Well, if a doctor took the less than 2 minutes that I just shared with you, this information, he might get $80 for a long visit, an extended visit, instead of $50 for a standard visit. Make an extra $30. According to the GAO, the General Accounting Office, which is the budget watchdog for the U.S. Congress, your doctor makes, over the 25 to 40 years a diabetic lives after diagnosis, your doctor makes $750,000 for every diabetic patient. So why would he take $30 when he can make $750,000? And most people say, well, my doctor belongs to my church. I got to believe in him. Well, don't let that protect you. Even members of the mafia go to church, right? According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 100 years ago, Americans were eating 1/2 pound of sugar per person per year. 1/2 pound of sugar per person per year. Today, 100 years later, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Americans are eating 157 pounds of sugar per person per year, or now we're eating 1/2 pound a day. So in 100 years, we've gone from 1/2 pound of sugar per person per year to 1/2 pound of sugar per person per day. That, plus the deficiency of these nutrients in our food, has resulted in this epidemic of diabetes. Do you think our genetics has changed that much? I don't think so. If you look in the book Rare Earths Forbidden Cures, one of our books, the guy who's doing all this study on these 2 trace minerals back in the 1950s, actually, Dr. Walter Mertz, went back into the 1940s and began to look at chromium levels in American blood. And he found out there was a big range in 1948, micrograms per liter of parts per billion, 28 to 1,000. In 1971, it dropped to 13. In 72, it dropped to 10. In 73, our chromium levels in our blood dropped to 4.7 to 5.1. In 74, it dropped to 0.73 to 1.6. In 78, it dropped to 0.16. Is it going up or down? It's dropping like a rock. Well, in 1980, it went up 3 times over 1978 values to 0.43. Why did that happen? Remember 1977? They're publishing all these papers on how chromium and vanadium was good for you. And so everybody was taking chromium and vanadium. They were running to health food stores and taking it. And so everybody's blood levels of chromium and vanadium went up. But because they couldn't cure diabetes with chromium and vanadium without all those other cofactors, in 1985, it went back down to 0.13 because people got frustrated because it wouldn't work if you just use those 2 trace minerals without the other cofactors. So between not having enough of these nutrients, the chromium and vanadium and their cofactors in our food anymore, and eating all this sugar, more sugar, less chromium and vanadium, we have an epidemic of adult-onset type 2 diabetes.